Well, folks, in this topsy-turvy, unpredictable college football season, this one we pretty much knew was going to land as it has. We've got Oregon, they're 5-0. Ohio State's 5-0. They look to be the two best teams in the Big Ten, if not beyond that. We got Ryan Winter on the line from Sports Chat 503 to help us break it down. Ryan, it is always great to see you. How you doing tonight?
Fantastic, Mark. Thank you so much for what you do for us and the entire college football world.
Absolutely. And nobody needs to do anything for this one. You just let the guys play. Just let's rev it up on Saturday. And it is kind of difficult to overhype this one. So we'll go from the atmosphere and the vibe and the hype, and we'll go down to the nuts and bolts of the X's and O's here in a minute. But you've been in Autzen Stadium a zillion times. This may be, I'm guessing, about as fever of a pitch as you've experienced.
Yeah, it's the number one game. I feel like it's the two best teams historically. Ohio State has run their conference over the last decade or more. Oregon has been running their conference for the last decade or more now. It feels like I don't put Oregon on the same level as I do the Buckeyes. I'm a Mets fan. I look up to the Yankees. It's kind of one of those things where, you know, maybe one of these years will be competitive kind of a thing. But Oregon did a lot by coming out to the Horseshoe and winning that game. And I feel like what that happened in that game, what solidified right there, these are obviously very different teams, different coaching staffs, all this sort of stuff for the Oregon side. But what that did was it gave there's a little bit more national credibility, and it sets this game up for a real big one. We don't have to do anything for it, but we will all do our part to overhype the living heck out of this thing all week long. We already have been doing it all year long. Now it's finally here. We're gonna bring it.
And, there's a situation with college football fans, and I see it all the time where there's a different approach to various programs. Some of them they respect, they admire. Of course, for that Saturday, they're the enemy, but it's not a big deal in regards to any kind of venom directed toward them. But with other programs, maybe it is. So where do Oregon fans typically stand in terms of their approach, their look at Ohio State football?
It's a good question. Historically, I think we're very regionalist, right? One of the things I always think it's important, Colin Cowherd said years ago, he was out here in Portland. He was telling me college football is becoming more national, and it's becoming less regional and becoming more national. And to where we on the West Coast are going to care what the SEC is doing or what the Big Ten is doing. Historically, you would hear about what's happening in other parts of the country. Maybe you'd follow along here and there, unless you're a guy like you who's interested in all of it. Most people were pretty regional, and we've really expanded it out. Now that our conference has been taken from us, and now we're all different piece and parceled out to all these different conferences, now it really matters. Ohio State's a team that we've looked up to. I mean, I remember when Rob Mullins took over as the athletic director, first 5 years, he talked a lot about how he wanted to change the perception of Oregon sports to be focused on competing nationally, not just competing with our local brethren, Oregon State, Washington, but to try to have a bigger perspective out there. Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, Georgia, at that time, Clemson or whatever else. We have Texas, Oklahoma. These are all the big name brands, the classic blue bloods, right? And I don't think Oregon's ever been really looked at as a blue blood. I think Oregon has worked very hard to put itself in the position it's in right now. But it's the young money group. It's the new money group. It's the flash and substance and the uniforms and everything else. No national championship. They always say that stands for zero, not an O. Those are the kind of things I think that we're still working our way up. Ohio State's been there. My aunt, rest in peace to my aunt, when we left the national championship game in Dallas after losing to Ohio State, that was the biggest, I don't want to be too graphic, but kick in the shorts that we could have got. That was the time we thought we were going to win it. We had the Heisman Trophy winner. Everything was on board. We had just beat Jameis Winston and that FSU team that won the year before or everything else. We thought that was it. And the fact that Ohio State came in there with a third-string quarterback, they had obviously great talent, but they came in and cleaned the clock in the second half. And my aunt said, that's just another championship for them. And that always rings in my ear. That's just another championship for their trophy case. We don't have one in the goddamn trophy case. What that would have meant for us versus what that meant for them, they were like, okay, whatever, next year. And that's the kind of thing. that we're not there yet. We're not at the Ohio State level. We're not at the Yankees level of counting championships. We're trying to get there. This game is absolutely paramount for Oregon. If Oregon can come out and win this game in year one of the Big Ten, in year one of being able to be in this conference and possibly giving an opportunity to win the conference, I mean, it's out of, I can't believe, I can't even find words to describe it. The fact that Oregon is in this position right now. They just got to cash the chips in, man. They got to get it done. I don't know if they will, but they're in a great position to right now.
And Ryan, you brought up that 2021 game and the importance of that game, even though it did not culminate with a championship for Oregon. Of course, they made it to the Pac-12 championship game. It did not culminate with a championship for Ohio State. They still had a top 5 team that went to the Rose Bowl and won it, but they lost to Michigan, didn't win the Big Ten title. But at the same time, considering what the recent history was against, the all-time history, Ohio State was
9-0.
Whatever the number was, 9-0.
Yeah.
And won that Rose Bowl, of course, in 2010, won that national championship game in 2014. And then had they, as a 2-touchdown favorite, just smacked around Oregon again, there might have been a different, just this continued, well, they're at much different places on the pantheon of college football. But Oregon got that done. And to your point, does that affect what we're going to see on Saturday? Not at all.
No.
Different teams, different coaching staffs, the whole thing. But in regards to the way people perceive these programs and these teams, I think it did a lot for the Oregon brand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now,
I was about to say that's also really quickly. That's a huge. That's probably our biggest non-conference win in program history, Mark. That's just another game for Ohio State. As it was lost, it was a tough one, but we look at that as the biggest one ever. That kind of shows you where we're at as programs comparatively.
And then we look at the very recent past and just looking at the last couple of weeks, this Oregon, it's one thing to have it announced, okay, we're leaving the Pac-12 and we're going to the Big Ten and all this offseason buildup for that. And then you get that first Big Ten game. Well, that first Big Ten game was at the Rose Bowl against UCLA. Was that really a Big Ten game? Is that what that was? And then, so maybe it sunk in a little bit last Friday night, even though that didn't turn out to be a good game. Oregon was clearly, forget 31-10, folks. If you didn't watch the game, Oregon was substantially the better team all over Michigan State. But to see a Michigan State team that did show up about 10 years ago as part of a home and home with Oregon, but as a Big Ten opponent, did it sink in just a little bit more that this is a member of the Big Ten now, wearing as I believe the play-by-play announcer during the game said, called you highlighters coming with bad intentions.
Yeah. Angry highlighters.
Yes.
I love that. Yeah. No, the Big Ten has been a tough one. I've been pretty vocal about it on my show. I was disappointed in the fact that the West Coast broke up. I mean, when you talk about regional, we are a region. We are very separated from the rest of the country. There's a gigantic mountain range that separates us from the rest of the country. We are our own area on the West Coast, and we had a pretty good run for 100 years. It's just that the rest of the countries, either or the media markets, everything else, wanted their part of the West Coast or whatever the case may be. But yeah, it was frustrating. And I went through the stages of grief. I went through all of them, and I finally got into acceptance at the end. And now I'm into the future, and now I'm into hope and what could be for the future. And it had to happen. I'm glad it happened, especially when I look at our friends, the Beavers and the Cougars out here that are on an absolute no man's land. I'm super excited, but with that also comes some other issues, right? We're in this to win it. We want to be recognized as one of the best teams in whatever conference we're in. I think Oregon brings a certain level of swagger or whatnot to the table. Maybe they don't have as much tradition. Maybe they don't have as many wins historically, but this is a team in Oregon that basically carried this conference, like I said, for about the last decade. USC has been down. Washington had a good run a little bit here and there, but it was ups and downs. Oregon, for the most part, only had that one real blip with the end of the Mark Helfrich era. Other than that, they've been pretty good now, 15 going on 20 years almost. This is a real challenge to go into the Big Ten because it's not only is it steeped in tradition, but it's also steeped in very good teams. And getting rid of the divisions and everything else, getting a 12-team playoff, it's just going to make it that much harder to get to that national championship. And going back to that statement I said about walking out of that game and how depressed we were after that game, because that was where we felt like we were that close. We had got through every level we needed to get through. We just had to get through that one last level, and we couldn't do it. As a Duck team and as a Duck community, that football team didn't do it. Great team, just couldn't give it up against another great team. This is going to be a tough one, because you're going to have on your schedule every single year at least 2 or 3 of these games that are basically the equivalent of a playoff game from our perspective in the past. You know, in the Pac-12, we had to get through a couple games every year, and there were really good games and really good matchups that people really didn't respect all that much, but they were close games we had to get through. Games against Cal, games against Stanford, games against ASU or Arizona, they would always show up. It wasn't the USC, it wasn't the marquee matchup, but it was still tough games. We're going to find that here in this conference as well. It might not be this year, but as this parity continues to go in the college football the way we see it, Vanderbilt beating Alabama is all you need to see, man. The best are not as best as they were in the past. The worst aren't as worst as they used to be anymore. Think everybody, a high tide rises all boats, right? So I think everybody's going to get better. The parity of this whole conference, the whole country is going to get better. And I think Oregon is just primed to be in a really good place going into the Big Ten. If they can be anywhere near the conversation of being a Big Ten champion in year one, we are absolutely thrilled, over the moon.
Got Ryan Winter on the line from Sports Chat 503. You can catch him right here on YouTube. And you go live every Tuesday evening,
Tuesday
Ryan?
night, yep, 5:30 Pacific Coast time. Other than that, I just do videos, random videos, top 25 videos, college football, the normal stuff.
Awesome.